and start to share my screen. Okay. Yes. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back for those who already joined us in the past. My name is Marilyn from Customized Training Solutions Private Limited. We're Asia's most trusted learning and business solutions provider, and we are also an official affiliate of TWIGA AERO. So our mission is to be able to help people and organizations across industries to achieve their objectives and overcome their current challenges through relevant learning solutions. And we work with some of these companies in Asia and globally. And these are some of our programs which used to be face-to-face. And of course, now with the travel restrictions, we have moved towards virtual programs. Wow. And why our clients choose us is because of the experience and caliber of our trainers, coaches, speakers, and consultants. And of course, you will definitely experience that later on when Maurizio and Jaap starts to bring you to their expertise in aviation. And of course, our customer centricity, passion, and responsiveness. And a lot of our programs are actually tailored so that it will be more cost efficient, relevant, and impactful. Okay, and just a few reminders so that we can have ensure a smooth and productive session. Please be present, participate throughout the full session, be on mute when listening, unmute if you have questions or answers to either Jaap's or Mauricio's question. And alternatively, you can utilize the chat functions to interact. And if you can turn on your video, please feel free to do so that we can see your handsome faces and beautiful faces. And of course, we will appreciate your feedback at the end of the program. So, and of course, it's my great pleasure to introduce, although I know that Mauricio and Jaap doesn't need any introductions anymore. It's my great pleasure to introduce them as our speakers for today's 3 ways to rebuild resilience to a successful operational restart. And both of them, Mauricio is the co-founder and chairman of TWIGA AERO, while Jaap is the managing director of IATP. And both of them has been in the industry for over 40 years each and have lived through a number of, numerous crises that rocked the industry. So without so much further ado, I'll give the floor to them. But before that, let me just bring you to, oh, sorry, I'm pressing. Okay. To one of our polls. Okay. Yep. So for those who are here, feel free to let us know your answer to these questions. We'll keep it for probably 30 seconds. Those are easy questions. Feel free to answer or to give us your feedback. Okay, is John? I think John mentioned that there's an issue in his connection, so. Okay, we're getting the feedback. So we'll be closing or ending the poll in 8 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much for your feedback. So this is just at least to establish with you about our topic for today. Okay, so it's good to know that most of them are prepared with a few who needs help. So without so much further ado, I'm done with the poll, and you can go ahead, Mauricio, with your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marilyn. Again, welcome to this webinar, our second webinar in a series that we will be running over the next few months. Marilyn, thank you very much for setting this up, and Jaap, thank you for joining me. I see some well-known faces, and I welcome all of you. It's very nice to have you here to discuss this very important topic, and I'm glad that Marilyn launched this very short poll right at the outset, because it's a way for us to stimulate our thinking about the subject that we're about to discuss. So I always welcome all your questions, so please don't hesitate, don't wait. Just Marilyn will help me to manage the chat. She's very good at that, and she'll interrupt me as needed. And but if you have a question, just ask away, just unmute yourself, and feel free to interrupt me. It's okay. I won't take offense. So let me share my screen with you. I've prepared a short presentation that will guide us through the next hour or so. Please confirm that you can see my screen, and that my screen is a presentation entitled TWIGA AERO Aviation Training and Consulting. Yeah? Okay, very good. So I wanted to just remind ourselves of the topics that we're going to be discussing, namely the BCP, the Business Continuity or Business Contingency Plan. The second point that is extremely important to all of us across the world is restoring the confidence of our passengers. I'm glad to hear that people from Ethiopia are flying to Botswana. Excellent. It's nice to hear that. But as traffic starts to move and increase, we've seen a bit of an increase in the second wave of COVID-19 cases in Europe, for example, North America, where many flights are flying. So there's a level of passenger confidence that we have to establish and increase and then maintain. And then the other thing that we need to concern ourselves with, and this is all under the umbrella of the BCP, is about meeting compliance-based training. And I just threw in the extra benefit of how can we do that while you reduce your costs. So I'll be talking to you a little bit more about that. Then we'll, please feel free to ask questions along the way. And if you don't want to be identified, that's okay. You can just let Marilyn know, and then she'll read them out to me in confidence. And then there'll be some follow-up that we will be sending you some information after this, so that you can also react to that and see what else may be needed. So to start off with, these are some of this is just a typical, I would say, a typical business continuity planning diagram, but I need you to put on your thinking hat. I certainly do. When I was put in charge of this BCP for a company here in Bangkok, and I've run other emergency plans and BCPs in previous positions that I've held. So, we'll go through this in a step-by-step fashion, but we need to make some serious considerations and evaluate the risks to the business in terms of, what is the top most important thing that we need to consider when we are developing and working through the BCP. But maybe even before this, we need to ask ourselves, because I know I've had a lot of colleagues ask me, why do we need a BCP? What is this all about? I don't know if you've experienced that in your companies, but people tend to shy away from this because they see it as a big beast and a bit of a burden. So the BCP, I compare it, because I'm an aircraft dispatcher by trade from many, many years ago, I compare it to a flight plan, okay? I don't want to find out that when I'm along the way from point A to point B, that I've got to make a right turn or a left turn or climb or descend. that is all part of my flight plan. Okay, so as a pilot, that's what I would establish. I would establish a flight plan, and as a manager, as a director, as an MD, as a CEO, I would want to know that my company is using the full power of a business continuity or contingency plan, so that when things take place in a crisis mode, or maybe even an emergency mode, as COVID-19 is actually, we don't have to think about it. We just go to the plan and we follow. We say step 1, step 2, step 3, and it becomes very easy to manage that way, because we take the emotion out of it. And once we take the emotion out of it, it's much easier to deal with whatever is happening at the moment. So, and one of the ways that we do that is by considering the actual risks. So what are the risks to the business? What are the risks to the people? In this case, in COVID-19, the risk to the people is very, very high, because we risk infections. And the infection means that people stay home. And if people stay home, it means that even if we had operations, we could not run them, right? So, I mean, it seems extremely obvious when we have a discussion like this, but actually, it's not so obvious when you're in the midst of the crisis. So one of the things that I like to do when we start a business continuity plan is to run some kind of a workshop. Now, workshop with senior managers is, no offense to any senior manager present, please, but it's a little bit like herding cats, in that everybody has a strong opinion on their part of the business, on how they would manage a situation of one type or another. So it's essential that we concur on the plan. And then a company, as we know, is made up of numerous departments or divisions and departments. So every one of those may have different considerations, different risks, and these need to be listed out. So when I started the recent BCP, it started out as a very simple, maybe 10, 20 line project document, which soon expanded and developed into something that is along 400 lines of information of the actions that we decided to take as a group, or decided to take individually, decided to take as a department, and what those actions were alongside everything that actually you see on this list. The first thing to consider, one of the first things to consider is, what is the risk to the business? Well, you might say it's pretty obvious, because my people are going to fall sick, the airlines are not flying, the airports are closing down, and so the governments are shutting the borders, and so the first thing that we need to protect is actually the cash flow. Would anybody disagree with that? Because we're trying to protect people, but we also need to first and foremost protect the company, right? And I realize that when I ask questions, I may not get a reply, so I won't be offended if you don't have a reply. It's okay. So then we look at, we look at the setup of the considerations. And are these considerations realistic for the organization? Do these considerations spell out the needs of the company? And do they represent the needs of the clients, or the needs of the airline, or the needs of the airport authority, or whichever area of the business you may be working in? How will it impact your business? How will it impact your partners? How will it impact your clients? How will it impact passengers, cargo clients, and whatever else? So these are all interesting points that we can list on a BCP, and we may not have the answer during the initial workshop that we go through to understand all the details that are integral to that. But as time passes in the crisis, or in, let's call it the COVID-19 crisis now, every week or every other day, or however often your executive group needs to review the BCP, it's essential that you, as a group, as a team, that you add and you evolve this BCP to fit the needs of the business. Because remember, the BCP is your plan. It's not going to be written in stone that you have to do this exactly as you said, because you have to evaluate it along the way and determine whether or not that's going to work or not. So once you have the considerations and risks listed, then there will be phases that you need to consider. So in this case, this is a very simple diagram, and it's not necessarily the one that I used. I'm just using it as a sample for us to have the discussion. But the first phase is obviously some kind of an analysis. And the second phase is going to be, what are you going to do once you have the analysis? What are you going to do to enact the mitigation or the recovery of the impact that this analysis, this crisis may have on your business? And then amongst that, everybody will have their own priorities. And when I say everybody, I mean, if you have 10 or 20 or however many executives that are part of the initiation and the drive of the business continuity plan, everybody will have a priority. And they'll say, no, my department is prioritized over yours because, I deal with passengers. Or, yeah, but we're flying more cargo, so my department is prioritized because it makes more money. And yet the MD might say, no, the finance department is prioritized because we need to protect the cash. So priority upon priority does not work very well. So we have to truly be very realistic about setting a priority based on criteria. And the criteria may be measured in different ways by different companies, in different locations, in different regions, and for very different reasons. So there is no one size fits all. Please understand that what we do in one area or in one way may not necessarily be exactly the same in another region or in another type of company, or even in the same company but across the world. So prioritizing is a very difficult exercise. And one of the best ways to prioritize is to ensure that the person that is running the BCP, I wouldn't say they cannot always be external, but they should be impartial to the business. Because if they are impartial, then they don't have a vested interest in any one department or another. Rather, they have a vested interest as a whole. And I welcome, by the way, Jaap, I welcome your input if you have any at this stage so far.
Yeah.
Well,
sorry to interrupt. Looking at the BCP, it is later on we can do the same thing for training. Yeah, because training is exactly the same process. We hear a lot of people saying, and I like the result of the poll, that 66% about people is prepared. That means that 1/3 is not prepared. Yeah, and 1/3 of the training not prepared can have a huge impact. Yeah, because we have to figure out which part is not covered here. Yeah, and that's the same with the BCP. You need to know exactly where to go. And that is what we miss in the setup of a lot of organizations we do have now. They just simply ask the question to HR when we need a training, and the training is ordered, but nobody checks what is really in the training. What is given? What is the essence of this training? It's not having a certificate in the end of the training. It's not. It is the impact. What can I do with the knowledge I have? Yeah, we need to put it into practice. And that is what we need also with the BCP. What is really going on in my company? And as Maurizio said, my part of the company, my department. And it can be different for every department. But we need to do this because we need to close the gap. And there is a gap. In a lot of organizations, we have gaps, but we don't really see it because we never did this analysis. Yeah, and the ID process, the instructional design process, is about the same as the BCP. Yeah, you cannot close the gap, whatever gap it is, if you don't really know what's going on. Because then you assume that you have done it, and half a year or a year later, you see that it doesn't work. And if we want to recover what we say, the confidence of the people, we need to do it right. And we have a chance now to do it right from the beginning. Yeah, so Maurizio, is that a little edged for what?
Yeah, thank you for that, Jaap. And you brought up a very good point. You know, one of the first considerations that I would have in my company is my supply chain, okay? So I'm going to chain to what Jaap just said. So let me show you how I would do that. You might think that the supply chain, if you're an airline, could be your fuel or some spare parts or something else. If you're an airport, your supply chain may be the providers that you have of all the services in the airport. Your supply chain could be something different if you're a ground service provider, because you'll have to keep your machines running, et cetera, et cetera. Well, your supply chain, there's also an internal supply chain. And Jaap just hinted at it very strongly, that if your people are not trained, your supply chain is broken. And if your supply chain is broken, you will not be able to provide the services to the airlines that are dying to fly in. Everybody is, you know, in the starting gates or the starting block, and they're ready to jump out and start flying. But actually, the first thing that's going to happen is the supply chain has to be intact. It has to be assured. Part of that supply chain, you need to consider the internal supply chain and the external suppliers, okay? So please think about that, because let's say that you have a company with 5,000 employees and you have had to furlough a good number of them, and they've been home for the past, I don't know, 5, 6 months, something like that, as most of us have had to endure. Well, all of those people require basic retraining. So the supply chain is very serious. How will you do that? How will you have now new protocols that we have to go through? We've got to maintain distance, we've got to wear a mask, we've got to do all these things. Fine. How are we going to have a throughput for the training classroom that usually used to take, let's say, 30, 40 people, and now can only take 15 or 20? When you need a shorter time in which you need to retrain everybody, because, you know, one company that we were talking to the other day said, yeah, I'm going to have to train 800 people in less than 2 weeks. Okay, so this is just some food for thought. It's not that simple. I heard a colleague in the industry say, yes, we have to retrain everybody for basic aviation security. We need to retrain 1,600 people. It will take, are you ready? 2 courses a week. It will take 52 weeks. So the plan is to complete that work by the end of next year. So in the meantime, what does that mean? Are we training people for a tick in the box? Or are we training people to be competent? Because if they've been away from their job and their function for several months, you know, they have to get back into it. I know I went back to work the other day after a 3-week holiday, and I went to the airport and I looked around and I thought, wow, this is so different. You know, it's as if I had been away I felt like 4 months. So anyway, please take those considerations very seriously, because when you go into these meetings with senior executives, the idea is to challenge each other, to spar, so that you can come up with a solution. And you know, once you establish these priorities, you'll need to develop triggers. When will you do what? That is the question. Okay. When will I take this action? And when you decide to take an action, my strong suggestion, my strong recommendation is that you consider data and facts. When somebody starts by saying, I'll spar with Jaap now. I said, Jaap, we're in an executive discussion, in a meeting, we're trying to decide on our BCP, and I'll say, Jaap, I think this should be done by next week because it's a top priority in my department. And Jaap might say, oh yeah, that sounds good. Or he might say something very contrary.
Yeah, I guess with the knowledge I have, I would say next week, next year.
You see, so we have very different opinions on that because, you know, what I think actually, and you know, politely speaking, nobody cares what I think. But if I produce data and I say the data is telling me we need to do this by next week, Jaap would have a very difficult time arguing that with that data, because the data will drive the decision. And once you have the triggers in place, then you can reset your priorities so that you have the right priority at the right time. Because it's critical that we don't overdo the spending, especially at a time when the revenue may have been, the tap may have been completely closed off, right? Mm. And then, of course, it's nice to be in an executive meeting where everybody talks about business continuity plans and makes big plans about everything. And then they all get up from the executive table, they go back to their desk and they start reading 100 emails and it all goes to the back. So in an executive meeting of that type, when you're establishing your business, your BCP, one of the key items is what are the specific actions, who will take them, and by when. And then the coordinator unit of the BCP should easily check on that progress to make sure that these actions are being done and they're slowly going into place or quickly going into place depending on the needs, right? And then, of course, we apply the cycle of constant improvement. So we go back, we test, does it work, does it not, and review it and go through iterations. Don't be afraid to say, this action doesn't work. This is not a priority. Let's redo this. The idea is to come up with a robust plan, okay? So that's my recommendation.
Yeah. Can I add something?
Please, by all means.
It is when you do it not right, when you just do it because of somebody said we have to do it, that is with the BCP, that's with training, with everything, it will be a tick in the box. And if you have a tick in the box, then you don't really solve the problem. You think you have something, but you have actually nothing. So after a few months, you will see what you have done, or actually what you have not done. Yeah, and that is what we have to consider. If I ask people, are you trained? They say yes, but that's not a good question. I have to ask you, what do you still remember from the training? And what can you apply from the training? Because that is more important than I have been trained. Yeah, I have a certificate. My whole wall is full of certificates. But do I have the knowledge to apply this? I don't know. Yeah, yeah. And this is with a lot of things, but it is considered as, oh yeah, we have to do this, so there's a tick in the box. But that's not what we need to do. We need to do it correct. The BCP, the training, you need to do it correct. And again, we do have time now, or we don't have time, but we have the opportunity to do it now from the beginning.
Right, you are. We had a very positive comment on that note. And you see, I really focus on the competence level too, but the competence starts with the BCP. In other words, do we have the competence internally to establish a BCP, to run a BCP, to conduct a BCP, to work through the BCP, to review it, and so on and so forth. So if we don't have that level of competence, then we should be truthful about it and say, you know, we need to review the way that we do the business. So the considerations to the business are extremely important at various levels. And we could say it's at the strategic, the tactical, and the operational level. And I always use these three levels when I address these topics, because they're extremely important. So strategic right now in terms of COVID-19, first and foremost, it's going to be financial, and it will be reputational. You know, and the commercial aspects cannot be obliterated from the tactical level, because clients, airlines will fold, and you know, and that will have a negative impact on the finances, because as they go bankrupt, or as they fold, or as they slow down their operations, they're going to be less likely to pay their bills to the airport authority or to the ground service provider. And likewise, the ground service provider, the airport authority, may be less likely to do business with an airline that they know is busy folding or you know, bleeding and hemorrhaging cash. They will not be engaging with companies like that. And at the operational level, you might say, yes, it's coming to a standstill, but at the operational level, there are other considerations. We've seen across the world, we've seen an immediate and incredible shift to cargo. So cargo volumes, good news, they're increasing. Better news, airlines are finding different ways to load cargo. For example, using passenger aircraft, they load cargo in the seats, or they remove the seats and they load cargo on the floor, except that a passenger cabin is not designed for cargo. And when you're trying to load 1,000, 2,000 boxes that are hand carried in the cabin, sure, you can throw a lot of labor at that, but eventually that labor, they have a backbone and they have bodily needs, and they'll get tired and they'll be fatigued, and then pretty soon, you know, the penny a pound that you're making with loading cargo in the cabin is soon going to be a thing of the past, because it's very, very difficult to load 10, 15 tons or even 5 tons of cargo by hand, day in, day out, on several aircrafts every day. And we're already seeing fatigue as a main sign of stress amongst staff worldwide. So this is, you know, these are some of the considerations that we should keep in mind. Here it is again, you know, the strategic, the tactical, and the operational level. I love the way that these guys fly their airplanes, because they are absolutely synchronized. And if they were not absolutely synchronized, they would not be able to take this kind of picture, because the kind of picture that we would see is where they're strewn all over the ground in a crash, right? So there is no difference actually between a highly synchronized flying team such as this and a highly synchronized mechanism of a team in a company in aviation that can make decisions in a way that is beneficial to the team, to the company, and to every individual at every level. So I think striking the right balance in the team through the BCP is critically important, and it's an opportunity. The BCP presents actually more than just an opportunity to run the business better. It is a golden opportunity to clear the air and crystallize the executive team, the tactical teams, the operational teams, and for them to work across and vertically in a uniform and unified way. So it's a great time to crystallize the team, in my opinion. At least this has been my experience now and in the past as well. Now, whatever we do, we never like change, right? I think everybody can agree with that. So the first thing that we need to do is to really take a look at what are the mission critical items. And we should start with a pre-crisis plan, because 67% of the companies present said, yes, we have a relatively well-working, functioning BCP. Fantastic. So, but until the other day, until a few months ago, nobody had an idea about COVID-19. And COVID-19 is very different from what we saw with SARS, which was, yes, global, but it didn't quite have the drive and the impact that COVID-19 is having on the entire industry to shut down every flight, or almost every flight, for an extended period of time. So the question that I ask here is not for you necessarily to answer now, but I want you to ponder it. I want you to really go home and think about this. You know, do you have a pre-crisis plan? And did you review that pre-crisis plan? Does your management team know that pre-crisis plan? Do they know where it is, and do they know how to open it up and exercise it? Don't answer those questions right now. Just think about it, okay? Now, we can strategize the recovery plans and go through the other items that I've listed here, but at the end of the day, humans, we don't like change that much. So we don't like wearing a mask. We don't like having the protocols. We don't like the fact that this virus has been casted upon humanity and the world. And, and we tend to resist change at the outset. But at one point, at one point we have to completely sort of turn things upside down and go through the chaos phase that our poor friend out here at the bottom of the pit is going through, in order for us to just decide, okay, we need to change fundamentally. We need to change fundamentally. We focused the discussion right from the beginning on the competence and on training and learning and retention. And, you know, I've got to tell you, later on, I'm going to show you some numbers that are staggering. But for some of the people in the world that think that training in my region, people don't like to do e-learning, they don't like to use computers, and they're not very computer literate, and they are this, and they're not that. You know what? We've been coining it as those people are in the Natural History Museum. A friend, COO of a very, very large 300 airplane company, the other day said, they don't belong in the Natural History Museum. They're actually the dinosaurs in the museum, because they believe that technology cannot be used because of what? I'm the old timer here. So soon enough, I'll be 62. I should be the one to say, I'm not going to adopt any new technology. I'm busy developing and expanding my mind with technology because it's the only way to go forward. So that transformation, once in place, you might as well embrace it and integrate it into your life, because from yesterday, or by now almost yesteryear, because we're talking about what, November or December 2019, depending on who you speak to, with the start of COVID-19, we're almost a year into that. And by November, December of this year, we will have a completely transformed new status quo in the way that we do business, in the way that we train, in the way that we go through the airports, in the way that we fly, in the way that we serve meals on board, and everything else, whether we like it or not. So when I worked at IATA, our CEO, then Giovanni Bisignani, used to say, you either embrace change or it will change you. So he was very formal about the change, and he actually implemented the e-ticket, something that people thought, this will never be done. Huh? There are no paper tickets anymore, right? So anyway, going on, you know, when we go through these when we strategize the plan, we actually need to develop very specific actions. We need to assign ownership. I know you've heard all this stuff before, you know, make your target smart, you know, specific and manageable, et cetera, and time related. But the point is, you need to have these things actually in place. So the key element about an action is not just to show somebody an action, but this is not about an audit. This is about the survival of your companies. That's the key, and that's the difference. Because otherwise, the companies will not survive. It's not just the individuals that could die from COVID-19. Companies have already folded. And you've seen all the pictures across the world where the aircrafts are parked. And those aircrafts, some of them I don't know when they're going to fly again, but it could be a long, long time. So the aircraft, are also suffering. That is a part of the consideration that the airlines must take into account. Even if the engineering section has taken care of properly storing the aircraft and everything else like that, and even if the aerodrome authority has taken care of, providing the adequate parking spaces for the aircraft, the fact of the matter is that these taxiways are not designed, for the most part, to withstand the pressure of the aircraft, even if it's empty, for 6 months. That's not how a taxiway is designed, incidentally. So, so the implementation of the actions and their timing and ownership is critical, because then you need to test that outcome. Did the action that I tried to put in place have the desired effect or not? And if it didn't, I need to just cannibalize it, throw it out, and do it again. Reinvent that action plan, right? I don't know if you want to elaborate on that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, what you put down here is actually what we normally see in the risk management process, in the quality management process. Yeah, and it is strange that we have to talk about this while everybody has a quality management system in place, isn't it?
Yeah.
But we are not working with it as it should be. Yeah, and when we look around in the world of aviation at the moment, a lot of companies are on the edge of bankruptcy. Yeah, it is not that we will go through in the next year with the same amount of organizations we have. It is really becoming the survival of the fittest. And
Yes.
if you are not the fittest, you will lose this. Yeah, and what we discuss here is an opportunity to be one of the fittest. Because you will face competition, you will face change. But if you don't want to change, the change will not come, is what Maurizio said. You need to do something. You need to change culture or whatever. And not your national culture, but the professional culture. Because that's what we discuss about. Yeah? It's not about national culture. You stay what you are. But it is the professional culture that we have to look at. And there we can make steps in the coming month, because that is what we need to do. Yeah, it is survival of your company. Otherwise, we won't make it. We see a lot of things happening in Europe at the moment. People are not, we talked about the confidence. A lot of people I speak here in the area, they say, well, as soon as KLM and Air France or whatever start flying again in the normal operation, we don't jump on the aircraft. We don't trust them anymore. Yeah, because we've seen all those aircraft on the ground. Who tells me that everything is safe? Yeah, and then something happening to what was British Airways that had to come back to London Heathrow because of some problem is not good for the image as well, isn't it? And we can do something about that, really. If we go through an analysis, just what is SMS telling us, what is QMS telling us? Is COVID and the recovery, is that also in your SMS? Do you have a specific part of it? Do you have risk-based analysis on COVID in the SMS? You should have. But I doubt you have it. Yeah? And that is how you work in your company now at the moment with the QMS, with everything you already have. It is nothing special. You have it already. You have the process. But you need to do it. Yeah?
I love the way that Jaap reminds us of the obvious, and his is a very direct way. Thank you, Jaap, for reminding us that the systems that we call SMS, RMS, SEMS, or QMS, these are actually living embodiments of the activities. They are not manuals. Please, they're not manuals. You know, when somebody shows me an SMS manual, I say, what is this about? It's fine that you have a reference point. Don't get me wrong. But if you are doing this, what we're talking about today, then you are working with the system, and the system is helping you to see what needs to be done and what needs to stop, and can help you to prevent serious consequences like bankruptcy, for example.
Safety culture is not what you have, but safety culture is what you do.
It's what you do, yeah.
Yeah, not what you have. I can have rooms full of manuals. I don't mind. It's what I'm doing, and that is important.
Yeah. Very good. Now, the priorities seem obvious. We talked a little bit about it before, but they should be based on what does the business need? What is the mission of the business and what is critical to that business to achieve that mission? Protecting the company, that means protect the money, protect the integrity, protecting the security, protecting the legal aspects that link to regulations, because that will come immediately. Protect the people, and the people are not just the managers. Protect your staff, protect the public, protecting everybody. This is now a new level of responsibility that we all have under this COVID-19, because we've never had this level of requirement to protect people as we have today. You know, I mentioned about the supply chain a little bit earlier, because the supply chain will help your company to stay alive. But if you can't protect the cash and you can't pay for the parts or the needs, then your supply chain will crumble, and then your operation will stop. Therefore, you'll be compromising the mission. So these are all things that this system, called the BCP, call it whatever you want, will help you to see clearly and will help you to see it objectively without the subjective approach that I was mentioning before. I think we should do this before, and I think we should do that after. You know, actually, nobody cares what I think. Show me the data, and let the data decide. Let the actual facts decide what is the priority, what should we do first, and what should we do next. The other thing that is extremely important is how you communicate. So inward and outward communication for all companies is critically important, because everybody's listening to what we say, including our internal parties. So our internal stakeholders could be our staff, could be the stakeholders in the airport environment, and outward, of course, it could, you know, things could go out to the press. Everything that we say can be extrapolated and amplified through the use of social media, for example. So it's very important that we also carefully manage the information that we issue outward. And now we have, you know, all these specific protocols. So we were talking about, see, Gilbert is donning his mask, but he must have a colleague coming into his office, because obviously it's no problem for us. But all these COVID-specific protocols that are in place that we were even talking about earlier, people going into quarantine, and you know, what are the controls? You know, everybody's taking their temperatures, but finally WHO and the CDCs of the world tell us taking your temperature is not an indicator. It's not a correct indicator that you have, you know, you're going to be screened for COVID or not, because you could be asymptomatic and not have temperature, but be a carrier of COVID-19. So, you know, all these things that we have in place, the specific protocols that are in place are extremely labor intensive now. They slow things down and they're labor intensive. So I know that we have to do them because in many cases it's a regulation, but we have to be sensible about the way that we approach these things, rather than just have knee-jerk reactions that lead us into more expenditure, more work, and without any kind of scientific evidence that it will benefit the COVID-19 environment. But you know, the next thing I want to talk to you about a little bit are the sets of triggers. When do we do what? Okay, so in my line of questioning, I like to always ask, why are we doing this? Well, because it's a requirement. Okay, If it's a regulatory requirement, the discussion is over, you have to do it, okay? But if we're just doing it because we want to put a Band-Aid on a broken leg, so to speak, then we need to really think about it very, very carefully. So the other part of the trigger that requires some serious consideration is, when do we have to do this? Or when should we do this? Or when is it going to be best to do this? Because whatever the trigger is, will have probably some kind of impact on cost. It will have some kind of a financial impact. If you want to take any action, I don't know, you want to start using masks for everybody. How many people do you have? How many masks do you need? How much do they cost? How frequently do you have to change them? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you may say, yes, my company, we require that everybody wears masks every day, and they have to be changed, 2-3 times a day. Surgical masks. Okay, so I made a calculation. We would need 500,000 masks per month. And the WHO, AERO, IATA, and everybody else is saying, well, surgical masks don't really work. They should be reserved for medical personnel, not airport personnel. So we have so many conflicting stories and so many conflicting messages. We really have to think for ourselves what is required, and when will I do this? So if you just, because once you make that decision, think back about the supply chain. So you want to buy masks for all your people. You want to buy 500,000 masks a month, okay? Where will you buy them? What will the cost be? Will you need all those masks? Will all your people actually remain on staff, or will you be sending people home on furlough, layoff, termination, whatever the case may be? So now you've got 500,000 masks a month, but you've only got a part of your staff. So the requirement has shrunk. So that's why the business continuity plan triggers are critically important to know why you do something, when you do it, then what you're going to do specifically, and how and who, for whom or by who will that be done. Because, when we see, when we hear pandemic, when we hear COVID-19, when we hear respirators, when we see everybody dressed up, donning full bodysuits and shields and glasses and masks and gloves, it looks pretty scary. It looks pretty scary, right? And so we tend to go into a bit of a, I don't want to say panic, but some people could really panic over this approach. So once again, my objectives, and I should have stated it probably at the very beginning, is to give you a better understanding of what a BCP is, why you use it, and how you can use it. BCP is your flight plan, okay? Even if you're not a pilot, consider it the flight plan that will get your company from A to B. So in terms of the actions, the owners, and the timelines, let's just get right to the point. Be specific. Make sure that the people that you have in the room in the BCP have the authority to decide and to act. It's not, I'm the boss, so I tell you, you have to do this. No, I also have to have the authority to spend the money, to engage people, and to take an action if necessary. And you must make sure that these things are achievable, because there's no point in saying, we've got to get all this work done by tomorrow. Well, if you don't have any people at work, you're not going to get it done. So you need to go back to the simple levels of understanding how you will achieve this. Because if it isn't achievable in the time that you've decided, then you've just made it impossible, not achievable, right? And then I like to, I always like to review and test the work that we did. So our children, we have 6-year-old twins, and they go to the international school, and here in Bangkok, and they stopped going to school. They didn't go to school for the last 4 months of the year. And my wife Brenda became their teacher, They used to have classes online on their iPads every day. You can imagine juggling 6-year-old twins on 2 iPads. I was still going to work at the time. So it was really a juggling act that Brenda was playing. It was very, very, very difficult. So I made a suggestion to the school the other day and to the superintendent of the school saying, look, could we just sit down and have a bit of a debrief collectively? We don't have to do it in person. We can organize it on Zoom. Let's find out what worked, what didn't work, what are we going to do the next time, and what does it take for us to be ready as a community? Now, I do that in my daily life for my children and their school because I realized that the teachers were taken completely off guard and by surprise, but because they were not ready with the technology. They were not ready with the technology. So they had an e-learning system going, they had a learning management system platform that they were using, but they didn't know how to use it. Well, imagine how well 6-year-old kids can use an iPad. I can tell you one thing, today our children are computer literate. They have the benefit of a young and flexible brain. They can absorb things like sponges, and it's fantastic. But people like me, you know, well into my 60s, the fact of the matter is that my absorption rate for new knowledge is significantly lower than 6-year-old children. So I require this kind of step-by-step review and debrief in order to understand, hey, what did I do wrong the last time, and what can I do differently the next time so that I don't repeat the mistakes and jeopardize my company? So I like to look at these things because it's actually an opportunity, right? And I share with you openly the fact that I see great opportunity for us collectively in COVID-19. Because I'll come to it later, and Jaap mentioned training several times and competence and so on. You know, what will it take for you to be ready in the future to maintain your competence and reduce costs? You will have to transform your training. You will not be able to go back to the classroom. And if you do, you will bleed cash, lots of it. That's just the way it is. So now we want to return to the business, right? The ICAO guidance document is a really interesting one. The CART, they call it the CART. And they've identified, you know, that a business continuity plan and a risk-based approach is what ICAO pushes forward. And this is a very good idea because they've devised 5 stages. So stage 0 is where nothing happens, pretty much, you know, no movement. And then stage 4, on the other hand, is where we've got a medical solution like a vaccine, and people are opening up for business again. So we're very hopeful that we're going to open for business, but is it going to be soon? Very soon? Not so soon? Actually, nobody knows. We're seeing, you know, you can tell us better, Jaap, because you're closer, you got your finger on the pulse, so to speak, being in Central Europe. I can tell you in Thailand, there's no passenger movement internationally unless it's a repatriation flight. The borders are closed, and if you do come here, you will be in quarantine, like our friend Gilbert said, for 2 weeks in the hotel, and it'll cost you $3,000. So that's just the way it is. Maybe you can tell us what's happening in between Europe and the United States with all these flights.
Well, just to stay first in Europe, Netherlands is so huge country. Then when we have to have 1.5 meter between people, we automatically already cross the border in Germany. You know, because the country is too small to have all those people here. Now, and from ancient times, the Dutch people are always willing to travel. You know, it's a small country, so people want to get out. And we're really confined to what it is now. It's getting very worse in a lot of places in Europe, and even the Netherlands. Part of the Netherlands is red for other countries. So the travel is at its very lowest. Yeah, and always also to America. We used to have a lot of flights every day. but it's almost nothing at the moment. And you were mentioning when will we recover, and part of the big question is when we do have a vaccine. Yeah, but we know all the stories, and I know there was a poll in the Dutch on the Dutch television from the Netherlands people. More than 60% of the Dutch people don't want to use the vaccine in the beginning. They don't trust it. Yeah, so the solution is not having a vaccine. The solution is when are people confident enough to take the vaccine to try to solve this. Yeah, and we expect it to be at the end of 21.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is also the time frame we need to make sure. Not in the States, because Trump says in November we have a vaccine, but he doesn't mention which vaccine he wants to have.
Yeah.
But that is not the reality. Having the vaccine is the first part, but that people are willing to take the vaccine and that it will start takes much longer. Yeah, so that's what we have to face, and I don't think that it will be at least not for half 21 before we can see some movement in that. Yeah, maybe sooner. I hope it is sooner, but looking at things going on at the moment, I don't think it will be soon. None of those companies that are developing the vaccine will take this risk to have a kind of a mistake in it. Yeah, so they are testing because they are afraid of giving it to the people, and later on it seems not to be good. So there's also a risk-based approach from their side. So yeah, we have to go back. We have to work on it, and maybe it gets sooner. And when it is sooner, you must be ready. Yeah, we don't know the real schedule, but we need to be ready. Yeah, so we need to think today for the vaccine of next year. Yeah, but travel is at its lowest at the moment.
Yeah, and actually we have the three superpowers working on the vaccine. ICAO identifies these 5 stages, and I think it's very sensible for them to say, okay, when we get to this stage, you know, we move to the next level. And so these, you see, ICAO doing this is indicating that what they tell us or suggest us to do, they do themselves. So they've developed a risk-based approach that is their business continuity plan, and these are their triggers. So there are some triggers listed at stage 0, stage 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's very sensible. So they're not predicating to us to do something that they're not doing themselves, and it's very good to see that. So I find the CART to be a very sensible document, and if some of you don't have that document, please let Marilyn know, and I'll make sure that Marilyn will send you a copy of it. But it's an easily downloadable document. So, but this is all about restoring confidence, okay? Restoring confidence in people so that they can start traveling, and so that the governments can then reopen the borders, okay? But now we're going to talk a little bit about transforming things. And the considerations that I would like you to keep in mind is what we've already discussed. So first of all, people have been away from work for 100% of the time for a long time, or not. You may have areas, regions, and pockets and companies that have continued working throughout to some degree or another, and they may not have that strict stay-home policy and a shutdown policy. In Thailand, we didn't have that, actually. We've had a partial shutdown. There were curfews. Many shops were closed, but we kept going to work at the airport. And we didn't have flights for passengers, but we continued to have cargo operations. So our people, you know, at the airport are still current to a great degree, you know. So, but the COVID-19 protocols are, you know, as I mentioned before, they're labor intensive, potentially very costly, and they change everything. And that has a direct impact on the training throughput for instructor-led training. ILT, I mean, is instructor-led training. You will not, internally speaking, in a company, you will not be able to conduct the same amount of training in the same amount of time with the same number of people as pre-COVID-19. Full stop. So your capacity and throughput is likely slashed by half. Combine that with the fact that by now it is very likely that some of these companies may have had to cut back on staff. So you say, okay, so I have, let's say, half the staff. Yeah, but you also have probably half the trainers. Okay? So this whole thing leads to the point about transformation. And the digital transformation that we've all been talking about is here now. So you either embrace it or it will change you, it will transform you, because there is no choice about this transformation taking place. We're in the midst of it, actually. And so I want to move on to this topic here that I find very interesting. We talk about e-learning. You know, you might have heard that we launched a significant e-learning initiative, blended and virtual learning initiative since about three and a half months. This was thrusted upon us. It's a project that I've had going for the last 18 months and which has been greatly accelerated. And I always thank Victoria for pushing me to the edge and saying, hey, come on, let's get this thing off the ground. Victoria is on the line and she's our affiliate in Nigeria and Western Africa. And she said, come on, let's get to this e-learning. Let's bring it to these people. And actually, you know, we accelerated the pace and we put it together and we launched it on June 1st. So now, what does e-learning mean? You're thinking it's going on a computer and taking a PowerPoint and putting it on a computer. It's actually quite different than that. E-learning is beneficial because of the reasons that I'm listing on this slide. For example, you will have 40 to 60% less employee time in terms of training. The retention is not the retention of the employee, it's what the employee will retain of the training that we give them. It increases by 60%. So what Jaap was talking to us about earlier, what will people remember of the training that we give them if it's just a tick in the box? Well, the answer is not much. They will retain 60% less than if it's on their own screen. Because if they're using either a mobile phone, a desktop computer, or a tablet, they are engaged. It's gamification. And it's the youngsters that will take over our positions in the future. And that is how they learn. That is their generation. So let's give it to them the ways that they can absorb it. Because when they do take e-learning, as it turns out, they learn 5 times more. These are not my statistics, by the way. And these statistics come from studies that have been done by companies far more advanced in e-learning programs and technology than we are. But we're embracing this change because we realize that it's the only way to go. The best part that I thought was that every dollar that is spent by a company in e-learning, it results in a $30 productivity enhancement. So just in case somebody was thinking, nah, this is going to be really expensive, I tell you what is expensive is paying instructors, developing courses, moving away from your core activity, whether you're an airline, an airport, or a ground service provider. You're not doing, when you're developing training, you're not doing your core activity. You're doing something that is not your core activity. The other thing is that, you know, to add one more statistic to this, I didn't know. Even though I developed the e-learning program when I was at IATA, and I was responsible at IATA for instructor-led training, the fact is that since the last 20 years, so since the year 2000, e-learning has increased by 900%. 900%. You know, you don't hear that kind of statistic anywhere, right? So the people that tell me no, 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 no. In my country, in my region, in my company, in my whatever, this is never going to work. We had a discussion the other day with some companies in the Southern Africa region, and they were asking us, but how are we going to make sure that people can actually, take the test and it's proctored and it's checked? Well, our LMS, our learning management system, has a proctoring function where the computer can be completely disabled of any function other than taking the exam. And then Zoom comes on and it films the employee and it films the exam itself. So it's bulletproof. And if the employee moves away, and I would say move away and then Jaap takes my place, well, then it would be visible to everybody that it's not me taking the exam, but my good buddy Jaap, who probably knows much more than I do, which is why I'm asking him to take it for me. So, all these statistics are extremely compelling. This is a solution to save you lots of money, which is what we as a company do. We save companies money. We provide solutions to save companies money whilst they retain their level of competence, enhance it, and grow the business. That's what we like to do. So we like to bring tangible solutions to our clients because otherwise we become irrelevant. So I've given it all I've got. What I'd like to do is assure you that you can follow up with us. You can go to our website and you will be able to schedule a free 15-minute discovery advisory call at any time on the topic of aviation that you like, of your preference, whether it's about the subjects that we discussed today or other subjects. And you can book it free of charge for the first 15 minutes. Thereafter, there's a nominal charge, but I'll let you decide on that. Of course, Jaap, I'd like to thank you very much for joining me. Jaap is one of our very close collaborators, and we welcome the opportunity to discuss more with you through our discovery calls or other. And now I'd like to open it up to some questions. So if you have any questions, I'll stop sharing my screen and we can go back to interacting. So please unmute yourself if you have questions and let us have your thoughts. I see Smokey has joined us, and Mr. AERO, nice to have you.
Super presentation. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, probably I should have asked this in the beginning about the BCP, but you were rolling on so well. I didn't feel I could stop you at the time. The BCP you mentioned, it should be implemented by somebody who's external to the company. Is that what you said? Well,
let's say this, the BCP is company specific and the company will own that BCP. What I would like to underline is the fact that somebody from inside the company should coordinate the BCP, and that person is probably best to be independent of the operations, right? Because, for example, I've been put in charge of the company BCP because I don't report to anybody but the CEO of the company. So there are no affinities with one department or another. There is no brotherhood alliance, let's say. And so that makes me an independent, objective party to the operations. I recognize what needs to be done together with my colleagues in the various departments. We put it in the BCP. I challenge them. They don't like that I challenge them, and that's okay because we're sparring. We're trying to improve the whole process. And then I serve it up to the MD and the CEO. So that he's comfortable with the fact that the person who is coordinating, I don't own the BCP, but I coordinate the BCP and I manage it day to day so that he can rest assured that things are going according to the plan that we have all agreed upon. Now, if you can have an external party to help you with the workshops, and that's fine, Sabina. But I think the person at one point or another may have to be really embedded in the company for a time in order to really understand the ins and outs and be able to create the challenging environment that is required. I don't know if you want to add to that, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's about the same as in internal auditing. Yeah, as an auditor, I cannot audit my own department. Yeah, I need to have a kind of a distance from the work going on, and that's what Maurizio meant. Yeah, so that you have people not from the own organization doing this, but have a kind of a helicopter view on it. That's basically what we want to express here.
Yes, and that's exactly my role in the company, Sabina. You know, you may know that I'm the Director of Safety and Quality Assurance. So I'm independent. I'm the internal auditor. So everybody looks at me like I'm the bad guy. So that's okay. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, that's an occupational hazard. So basically here we are looking at the quality manager or in the quality department.
Well, it has to be somebody who has the authority. It has to be somebody who can take action and can take decisions and can challenge people. So it is not so much a function as much as it is a level of competence that is required and the level of independence in the organization in order to conduct the challenges and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Thank you.
Most welcome. Anybody else? Any other? Okay. I hope I've shown you, I'm just reading from a couple of notes that I've had. I hope we have given you some insight on the BCP, something that will be maybe mind expanding or maybe just nice to know or good to know. I hope that you've had an opportunity to gain some insight also on the returning to operations. And I think, you know, one of the main points that we really want to drive home here is the fact that transformation is upon us. Okay, we've been transformed by COVID-19, the whole world, whether we like it or not. It's here, and now we have to embrace this. Going back thinking that we're going to do business as we did before, it's never going to happen. So you might as well park that idea, because it just will not go back. Time never goes counterclockwise. So that's why we've developed this solution for e-learning and virtual learning, and we plan to drive this forward full steam ahead through our excellent affiliates. And starting Marilyn, I'd like to thank you again for setting this up and for your drive and commitment, and the others that we have online with us today, Dumisani in Southern Africa, and Victoria in Western Africa, and Bakari also in Western Africa, in the Gambia, where we're making excellent inroads. We've already received initial approvals from civil aviation authorities of our courses, and more approvals are pending. We will work through ATOs, the approved training organizations in countries, in order to facilitate their uptake of an e-learning platform which is already built. Keep in mind, what we're talking about here are not just courses that are compliance related. Sure, that's what it is. But the courses that are compliance related are on a robust learning management system that can host tens of thousands of simultaneous users with no capital expenditures to the company that contract us to do this for them or with them. So it's extremely important to understand that there is no capital expenditure. You just pay for the course. The cool thing is that, in aviation, we always talk about being current, right? And so we make standards that are done once a year, right? Everybody's aware. IATA, IHM, I used to run the IATA IHM when I was working with IATA and, helping the old groups, the airside safety group, the AXA group, et cetera, et cetera. And so we made standards that changed on January 1st of every year. Even though the manuals are now published on January 1st of every year, the operational manuals are now, they give you 3-4 months, so they are, they become active on the 1st of April of every year to allow everybody to have the chance to embed the new procedures and processes from HM, IGOM, etc. Okay, here's what we do. My team and I, and we have experts from across the world who are highly skilled and certified. For example, in security, we have a global aviation training certified individual who is also a USAP, an ICAO USAP auditor, and an ICAO trainer. He's been in the aviation security business most of his life. Jaap is he's still a young man and has 40 years of experience and has done a tremendous amount of training work. We have Dr. Flaherty in the UK developing our human factors course. We bring you the highest level of expertise. We don't have some guys in the back room who used to work in operations for 20 years, don't understand the first thing about training, but they're developing the training, my gosh. So we bring you the best expertise. I see our friend Malik has joined us. Malik is one of the top qualified and certified IATA DGR instructors. That's why we like the fact that Malik is the guy that develops our DGR training. Thank you, Malik, for having joined us. So we bring you expertise, but what happens is that I was talking about the cycle of publications for IATA that starts at the end of every year. Well, we guarantee that we will go through a review cycle, and that review cycle, we will publish an updated course on by the 31st of January of every year. So that let's make an assumption that you take a course today, you go through the e-learning course, you pass the assessment, you download your certificate. Now you're current for 2 years, right? Except that the standards will change in 3 months. But you'll be current for the next 2 years. So what you do is you take the same course free of charge because you have access for 365 days, and you take it again in February of 2021. Now you're current for 2 years with today's standards, not yesteryear. So our currency is guaranteed to be ongoing, and in real time, it will be that year's standard. So this is putting a completely new spin and adds a tremendous amount of value to our training. So we're here as a service provider to the industry to provide a good solution. So I don't want to serve up old training. I'm not interested in that. So I just thought I would add that in because, I think it's a relevant piece of information for the discussion that we're having. Do we have any other questions or comments or?
Yes, Maurizio.
Yes.
Are you gonna share these slides with us? They were pretty good slides.
Yeah. Thank you, Sabina. I'll be happy to. Yeah. So maybe Marilyn, since you'll be in contact with everybody, you have the list of names. Please just PDF the document and forward it to the attendees so that they can have that.
Sure, I'll do that. I'll be sending a thank you call as well. So we'll be sending you along the materials with that.
Thank you, Marilyn.
You're welcome.
Please include the cow cut document. Marilyn, please include the cow cut document.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you right after the call, Marilyn, so that you can include it. Yeah.
Are there any more questions from our participants?
Over to you, Marilyn. Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay, so before we end, we actually would like to share another poll, which is okay. Okay, so please do help us fill this up, whatever works or applicable to your organization. Please feel free to share with us which among the choices would be most beneficial for your organization. We've shared with you earlier BCP online courses, virtual and blended, of course, the advisory, and you can even actually request for a free session for around 15 minutes or 50 minutes. Did I get it right?
15.
15 minutes for free.
Yeah.
Yes. So please share with us your input in terms of which one would benefit you, what would benefit you most. Okay, so if everyone is done, I'll just also end the polling now. Okay, so this is the result. So all of you would agree that online and blended learning will be most helpful for you in your organization at this point in time. Thank you so much for that. And let me just, did I get to share with you the result?
Oh, there we are. Okay. Oh, very good. Very good. So please, because you seem to have, you know, a wish for blended courses, virtual learning, we will be running a series of courses that are available right away. Jaap has a great course for instructional design, and you know, he's ready to go now. So we can put all these courses, we have them available on virtual training. So anytime you like, just please call us and let's make it happen.
Yes. And again, these are some of the earlier Mauricio mentioned as well our aviation foundational training diploma program. So here's some of the programs that are currently available and more coming soon. And these are, if you'd like to screen share, these are some of the, these are the entire group, I would say, as of this time, in terms of your contact people in your area. So feel free to email us or contact us. Sorry. Okay, so if you haven't screenshot yet, please do so. But I'll be also sending you an email, a thank you email later, which includes the contact details of the whole team. And you can also visit our website for the e-learning. It's there as well. Okay, and with that, we really thank you for your amazing participation. I see a few comments in the chat, so I'll check on that after this. And with that, we would like to thank you, and we would like to close this session with this quote from Tom Hopkins, that you are your greatest asset. Put your time, effort, and money into training, grooming, and encouraging your greatest asset.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Marilyn, thank you. I really appreciated your presence and your inputs. I'm really very proud of the team that we put together. So I'd like to thank you for your participation and your efforts. Marilyn, especially, you've done a great job once again. So thank you all. And I look forward to engaging with you in future webinars like this and some of our courses. And you know, we have a lot of great courses coming up, some new ones, especially aircraft disinfection and DG category 12. So a lot of movement is going on. So keep an eye open on what we've been doing and what we will be doing, because there'll be a lot more coming your way. So once again, thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Maurizio. Thank you, everyone.
Mauricio, and thank you, Jaap.
Thank you.
Thank
bye-bye.
you, everyone who
Thank you. Bye-bye.
participated. We
Thank
appreciate
you, everyone.
Yeah, we appreciate that all your thank you messages. And thank you for the whole team who actually able to attend here. And we'll just look forward to work with you soon and add value. Thank you. Bye for now and stay safe, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you again. Thank you. Bye.